Glory carriers, Orlando, to all of you, the Lord's people. Lady Eames and I, we have some exciting news that we want to share with you. Lady Eames?
Absolutely. The Glory Center has entered into a season of expansion and transition. And guess what? You're going to be able to connect with us and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
So absolutely, you'll be able to connect with us on Sundays and Tuesdays. We're still doing ministry, but we're just doing it differently. Yeah, we're still preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, but we're just doing it differently. We're out of the box, but we're still in the book. Absolutely. So I'm excited about this moment. How about you? It's going to be an amazing time listening to guarantee connectivity. We have a weekly Zoom platform for all of you, the glory carriers, and anyone that desires to link up with us as a church body. We will enter into a study on seeking Him. Yes, so purchase your book right now. It's going to be on the screen. Purchase your book right now as we are seeking Him, and you'll be able to interact with us. You'll be able to engage into this wonderful teaching series. Also, we have some wonderful opportunities for you and I to come together for moments of fellowship and outreach. And even while we're scattered, we can still be together. And we want you to know that we love you, we care about you, and you're always in our prayers. And just know that help, hope, and healing belongs to you.
Welcome back, and welcome back. It is so great to be with you on today, and I am so excited to be back here at the Glory Center as we are now going to do it different. I want to tell you thank you for watching with us on today and joining in for each and every one of you that are out in our audience on today. As we were going on to section number 3, as we talked about being able to trust the process that we were in. I promise you something special on this week, and I guarantee that this is definitely going to be something that you're going to enjoy. Some are going to be in amazement, and others will be like, really? But however, we got to understand that as long as we trust the process and be not just have faith, but faithfulness, God is going to be with us and endure as we endure the process. As I left off as on last week, we were talking about trusting the process. I said that there were 2 things that we did not want to see the process of. And one of that was making of laws. And the second one was the making of sausage, because they were both unappetizing and they were unappalling. But if you don't mind, I told you I want to share and add one more to that list, and that is the making of a miracle. Oftentimes, because we always say, I'm trusting God for a miracle. I expect a miracle every day. But you got to understand that in that miracle, there is a process. Some miracles are instantaneous, and there are others that come with the process. And sometimes those processes are unappealing and they are unappetizing. But if we have faith in our God and we have faithfulness, then we will endure the process. I promised you that I would share just a little bit of my testimony on today. It is impossible for me to share it all right now, but I'm going to give you a snippet of the testimony and the miracle that God has performed in my life. Back in November of 2020, my husband and I were both diagnosed with COVID-19. Y'all know he gave it to me. Yeah. But anyway, we were quarantined for 14 days in our home. And we didn't just have the diagnosis, but we had pretty much all of the symptoms, and we were not feeling well at all. And we were trying to take care of each other and trying to do all of the antidotes that we read online and the steam baths and all of the things we were trying to do to be healed, to be well. But in the process of that, I noticed something different about my left breast. And I noticed that there was a lump there that I had not felt before. And that lump was rather large, but I said, well, maybe it's just the inflammation. I had a lot of inflammation in me. And so I thought maybe it's just the inflammation with COVID. And so I didn't share it with anyone. I called my PCP and I was trying to set up an appointment to be seen. And so because I had COVID, of course, I had to wait out the 14 days, and then I had to wait until I got a negative reading. Once I got a negative reading, then I set up an appointment with my PCP. And now we're all the way into December, mid-December, that I'm just getting in to see my PCP. And as I got in to see him, he noticed the same thing. And he says, well, let's get a mammogram. Let's try to figure out what's going on. And so as I went, at that point, I had that mammogram done. The mammogram showed the lump, and they said, ooh, it's pretty large. They said anywhere between 4 and 5 centimeters, pretty large lump. We want to send you for a biopsy. At that point, I thought maybe this is a little more serious than I am taking it. So I began to share with my husband. I began to share with some prayer warriors and began to pray that when I went for this biopsy, I just knew that this biopsy was going to be benign. It was not going to be cancerous. So they ordered the biopsy, and the biopsy was not ordered until March of 2021. No, the biopsy was in February. Went in, got the biopsy, was going back for the results in March of 2021. I still did not think it was anything serious. So I didn't even take my husband with me to go to the results. I went into the doctor, sat down with the doctor, and we sat down, and she began to pull out a list of paperwork. And she began to share with me that the lump was cancerous. They needed to determine what kind of cancer it was, asking me how did I want to proceed. Did I need to go get other people's opinion, other doctors' opinions, At this point, I'm numb. I'm like, oh my God, what in the world? This is not happening to me. So I asked her, I said, well, based on what you see, what stage am I in? And she said, you're anywhere between 2 and 3, stage 2 and 3 breast cancer. And we need to determine what type of breast cancer that you have so we would know how to treat it. As it further went down, the first thing I did was call my husband. I said, honey, he was like, everything good? I said, no. I said, they're telling me that I got stage 2, stage 3 breast cancer. The first thing he said is, what? He said, the devil done bumped his head. And so I didn't know what to say. At this point, I'm numb. I can't cry. I don't know whether to cry. I don't know whether I'm just numb, and I don't know how to react and what to do. So I go back. They set me up for an appointment with an oncologist. And so I go meet with the oncologist, and this time I put my sister-in-law on the phone because I'm still trying to figure out everything that they're talking about. And she's a nurse practitioner, and so she was able to take notes and be able to decipher everything for me after it was gone, after we were off the phone. But one of the things they said to me is that your breast cancer, by this time they knew that it was triple negative breast cancer, which means that it was an aggressive cancer, which means that if they didn't attack it quickly, that it could spread relatively quickly. And so they had a fear that this would spread, so they began to do all kinds of tests on me. But the thing they wanted to do, they wanted to say, okay, we got to treat this with chemo. We're going to treat it with chemo. So now I got the decision of, okay, am I going to take the chemo? Am I going to do the natural routes? What am I going to do? And I just didn't have any answers at this point because I just said, you know what, let's just do chemo. You're telling me that it could spread. I don't want it to spread. I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but I have a question for you. What do you do when all your life you hear that God is a healer? When all your life you hear that Jehovah Rapha, the God that healeth thee, and all of a sudden you know he could have healed you. You know he could have brought back a negative result, a benign result. You know he could have resolved dissolved the tumor even before you went back. But what do you do when God allows you to go through the process? Because he's setting the stage for a miracle. I sat there and all kinds of thoughts were going through my mind. I'm trying to, in my mind, is this unto death? Is this going to take me out? Is this it for me? What is chemo going to do to my body? How is it going to affect my way of living? How is all of these things, how is it going to change my life? And so as I began to think about these things, and it just kept racing through my mind, and I just didn't know how to combat the thoughts of my mind. And so one of the things that I began to do is I said, I want to live my life as normal as possible. If I'm going to go through this, I began to ask God some questions. I asked God, why me? Why now? And why this? What do you do when you're trying to ask God a question or questions and you get no answer? How do you trust the process? Remember, we talked about you got to be resilient. You've got to embrace the unknown. You've got to be able to trust the process, because now I'm in a situation. I'm in a process. I have no control over it. What do you do? Fear creeps in. They're talking about surgery. They're talking about chemo. I ain't never had surgery in my life. I ain't never been sick a day in my life other than a common cold or something of that, which I very rarely got. Now you're telling me I have something in my body that could take me out. What do you do? Well, I began to start trying to wrap my mind around some things, and I began to share it with my family members, and they made it worse because they started crying, and not you, and you the baby sister, and all this stuff. And I had been good up until that point. And then I told my son, and he started crying, and everybody crying. And I was like, oh, God, I can't take this. I can't take this. Now my emotions is way on 10. So I began to talk to my husband, and I said, honey, I don't want to share it with everybody. I only want a few people to know. I only want some prayer warriors to know. And I want to kind of keep it closed until I get to the other side of this to see where this is going. Because I didn't want a bunch of people around me, number one, telling me how many people they knew that passed from cancer. You know, the first thing that people do when they find out you got cancer is begin to tell you about their grandmama, their auntie, or somebody who done died. They don't tell you the success stories about who done overcame and how God is a healer, but they want to tell you the stories. I did not want to hear that. So I did like Jesus did in Mark 5:40, when they took Jesus to the daughter who was dead, and Jesus said, oh, she's not dead, she's only sleeping. And so when he said that the people that were around him began to laugh. They didn't believe what he said. So what did Jesus do? He closed the door and he put the doubters out. And sometimes we have to do that in our lives. We have to get rid of all that negativism. We got to get rid of those people who don't believe like you believe and know you're trying to go somewhere. All those dream killers, you got to put them out and close the door and work with the team that knows that in your process, you're going to make it through. And that's what I did. I closed the door and I had just a select few people that knew what I was going through. And so all of a sudden we had a powerful intercessor team that was praying for me. And I made a list of the side effects, of all the side effects that chemo can do to your body. And I gave that list to all of the people that were praying. And I asked them to pray these words. I said, I want you to pray that God would reverse all of the negative effects of chemo on my body. And as I began the journey, I would get up at 5 a.m. and just pray and read the word of God and read healing scriptures. And because my mind would race so at night, the Bible says an idle mind is the devil's workshop. I would put in my ear Cindy Trim's healing prayer and Kenneth Hagin's healing scriptures at night. And I would let that marinate in my spirit all night long. I would listen to it all night when I was sleeping. And then not only that, I would take communion almost daily because there is power, there is healing power in communion. And we'll elaborate on that at a little later date. But I decided that I would have the fourth attribute in trusting the process, and that is being grateful. Regardless of what we're going through, we have to have a grateful mindset. I promised God that I would not complain no matter how bad it got, and I would be grateful to Him for life and for what He has done in my life. I want to tell you that I went for my first chemo treatment on March 22nd of 2021. And doctors and the oncologists were saying that we're going to do about 20 weeks of chemo. And the goal is to try to get the tumor to shrink as much as possible. And then we'll go in and do a lumpectomy and remove the remaining of the tumor because the tumor is much too large for us to go in and take it out at this point. Well, that was their goal. That is what they decided that they were going to do. And because I'm trusting the process. I'm embracing the unknown. Went for a chemo treatment on March 22nd. And I went to work right after chemo. My boss looked at me like I was crazy, but I was determined to live as much as a normal life as possible. So here's where it got emotional for me. I knew that there was a possibility that I would lose my hair with chemo. And so I went to my hairdresser and I had her braid my hair down and I had her put on one of the lace fronts where they can glue it down and all of that. And I said, because I don't know what's going to happen to my hair and I don't want to be walking down the street in braids or something just start falling out my hair. I don't know how this thing works and what it does. So she did that. After my first chemo treatment, about a week later, a few days after that, my head started itching really bad. And I called her and I said, I want to know if you can do a house visit. And I asked her, would you come to my house? Because I don't know what's going on under this wig. I said, it's really, really itching really bad. I said, and I'm going to need you to, I don't want to be in the shop when we figure out what's going on under here. She came in, she took off the wig and all of that. And as she began to take the braids loose, she didn't have to take them loose because she could literally just pull them off my head. My hair was just pulling off. She just pulled them out of my head. I knew this was a possibility of what would happen. But when it happened, it became very emotional because all my life I've had long, pretty hair, flowing hair, thick hair, and now all of a sudden my hair is gone. Will you trust the process? I'm sitting there, emotional, called my husband. I always call my husband. I said, honey, my hair is out. It's gone. He said, well, honey, you still beautiful. He knew what I needed to hear at that time. I'm sitting there, all my hair is gone. And so now I have to go to a straight wig. And so that week, I got up for prayer. Now, all this time I've been praying to God. I have not heard from God, have not heard His voice. I got up for prayer and I dozed off. And when I dozed off, when I woke up, there was an angel sitting right next to me. And when I looked over to my right, it was sitting so close to me that I jumped. And when I jumped, it disappeared. And it was wearing a long gray garment. And it was sitting so close to me. And when it disappeared, I heard a voice speak to me And it said that I am with you. In this journey, through all that we were going through since November, this is the first time that I heard God's voice. I heard him speak through other people. I heard him speak through my husband and say, honey, you're going to be okay. I heard him speak through Apostle Danny Williams when he said, I heard the Lord say that the lump will dissolve. I heard him speak to Apostle Naomi McCammon when she looked me in my eyes and said, you shall live and not die. I heard him speak through Bishop Liza Hickman when she said, your work is not done and you're going to make it through this. I heard him speak to Pastor Riley when she said, you're going to live to see it happen, Naomi. You're going to make it through this. But all of the people that I heard him through, there was nothing like when I heard the voice of God speak to me himself. And I had a peace about what I was going through when God spoke to me and he told me that I am with you. I went to my second visit for the chemo. This time I had a doctor's appointment first. And the nurse practitioner came in. And mind you, every night I'm feeling, because I still trust in God. Even in the midst of this chemo, even if God is going to do this thing for me. And I didn't feel any change. But then I woke up one morning and I didn't feel, I said, honey, it's gone. I said, honey, I can't feel it anymore. That went to the doctor and the nurse practitioner said, have you noticed any shrinkage? She said, probably not. It's only been a week. You only had one chemo. You probably haven't gotten any shrinkage. I said, but I don't feel it anymore. And she said, no, that can't be. And so she came over and she began to feel and she began to try to do the breast exam. And I was sitting up and she said, no, I don't feel it. She said, maybe it's hiding under some fat glands. She said, lay down. So I laid down and she began to do a breast exam. And then she wanted to do a lateral because she was trying to feel the difference of the two breasts. But then she said, she couldn't feel it. She went out the room and she went and got the doctor. And he came in, my oncologist, and he said, I know where it's at because I'm the one that measured it. I can tell you exactly where it is. I'm good at finding them. She went in, he went in. He could not find it. God had healed me and dissolved that tumor. But I come to tell you, the doctor said to me these words. He said, I knew the medication that I had you on was good. He said, but I didn't know it was that good. And I looked at him and I said, it is not the medication. The medication was just the process that I had to go through. But God healed me. That doctor walked out of the office and I was waiting on them to come back to tell me my next step. I never seen him again. He never came back that particular day. But I come to tell you that I have made a declaration as I began and I continued the treatments. They could not find it. They still cannot find it. They did tests all over my body, did all kind of biopsies on my body. There is no cancer anywhere in my body. But I come to tell you that it was not an easy process. It was hard. It was a hard thing, but God had already factored in my life that was an opposition and an obstacle that I would have to face. That was one of my Judases that was in my plan that would push me into destiny. Come to tell you today, that's just a part of my testimony, and I'm going to come back and give you more. But I come to tell you, so I went to work and I've been wearing this wig and finally I got to a place where I said, I'm not going to hide anymore what God has done. I won't hide what God has done in my life. I walk around with my bald head. I shine it up because it is a testimony of what God has done in my life. He is a healer, but he took me through a process to get to that point. You got to understand in your life, whatever you are going through, you got to trust the process. I could have given up. I could have stopped. I could have thrown in the towel, but I chose to trust God in the process. I would not give up. I would not complain. I would not charge God falsely because I know the God in whom I serve. And so I will no longer hide what God has done for me. I will trust God in all that he has done for me. And I will continue to testify to the mountaintop that God is a healer, that God is a deliverer, and God will set you free. So as we conclude this series, when we're talking about Judas, Peter said we had to bring somebody else into Judas's position. And they pulled straws. And they came up with messiahs. I come to tell you, if you abort your mission, there will be a replacement that will come your way. Don't let nobody have to replace you when you can trust the process and endure to the end, because God is definitely still on the throne. Now, I know some of you out there are watching, are facing some challenges, whether it's sickness, whether it's health, whether it's children, whether it's family. I know that you are facing some challenges, but I come to ask you today to hang in there just a little while longer. I come to declare in your life today that if you will only trust the process, that God is going to bring you through. He's going to bring you out. All you've got to do is trust and believe, but you've got to have resilience. You've got to have some longevity in you. You've got to be willing to go through. And when you go through, you're going to come out, as the Bible declares, as pure gold. In other words, you might come through and don't have no hair, but I come to tell you, I will take health over hair any day. I come to let you know that God is real and he is yet healing in today's society. Trust God. And those of you that are out there watching right now, go ahead and drop it in the thread. If you need prayer, whatever you need prayer for, whatever you're seeking God for, whatever your process is, drop it in the thread. Let us know what you need prayer for. And if you want a prayer counselor to reach out to you, drop a phone number in there. We will reach out to you. Trust the process. And remember, we're doing it different at the Glory Center.